The grammar of PowerPoint. The first step in building a PowerPoint slide is deciding on what you're going to use for your background and what font style and colors you're going to use. Now, a lot of people will simply just grab a template. They think that this is the easiest part, but you need to establish a clear foundation upon which you're going to build your slides so that you can establish the grammatical and logical relationships throughout. So to this end, we're going to cover how you can choose an effective background and font style and color. So we're going to break this PowerPoint slide down into two key subsections. The first is going to be the color for your background, and the second is going to be your font style and color. When you create a PowerPoint slide, you're immediately given a variety of options for templates that you can use to start your slide. Students, business people, whatever the case might be, are inclined to grab one of those because, especially for the title cards, they look really engaging. However, I have one piece of advice regarding these templates. Don't use them. There are several reasons why we don't want to use these templates. First, they are repetitive. The first couple slides look great, but as you go through, it's the same structure over and over. The audience will get bored with that. Second, they're not very creative. Although they look imaginative and fun to start, the audience is quickly going to pick up on the repetition and the patterns, and they're also going to recognize that this is a template, that you didn't really put this together. Third, the slide format makes it really difficult for you to structure slides. They lack a lot of empty space. There's often images and other patterns in the background that interfere, and you can't create a slide that suits your needs ideally. And finally, they make transitions difficult. Because the borders don't always match up, it's difficult for you to slide over or push over from one slide to another. So it restricts your options for transitions from slide to slide. What can we do instead of using a template? Well, we choose our own background color, and from there, we color code the text boxes to conform to that and create our own patterns. Let's talk about color. If you look at the background to this slide, you might assume that it's white because it's a very light color. But when we bring other light colors on top of it, you can quickly discern that the initial color of the slide was a light blue because you can see the other color contrasts. You have lots of options for your color background. So let's talk about what you can do and what you should avoid. The first tip for your background color: avoid white backgrounds. White is actually the default color for a standard PowerPoint template. However, you want to avoid this. Why? The reason is simple. White is bright. If the audience sees this white background flashing back at them the entire PowerPoint slide, it can be very hard on their eyes. So we want to choose a different color. How do you set up the background color? Let's take a look at the functions that you need to operate in order to customize your PowerPoint background. The first thing you're going to do is look at your top ribbon, and you're going to bring your cursor all the way over to the view, which is near the far right next to the word help. When you click on the view option, it's going to bring up a new ribbon. And on that ribbon, you're going to bring your cursor over to the slide master. Once you are in the slide master view, you want to scroll up to the very top slide. All the other slides are subordinate to it. Now this is important. The changes that you make to that particular slide will apply to all the slides in your PowerPoint. However, if you go to one of the subordinate slides, the changes you make there will only apply to slides of that style. Now on this page, you can change the background color, and you can establish your font style and color as well. In addition, if you want to add any logo watermarks for schools or corporations that you want to appear on every slide, you can also insert them there. Let's start with changing the background color. The first thing you're going to do is simply right-click the background of the slide. When that happens, this drop-down menu will appear, and you're going to go to Format Background. Once you're in the Format Background page, you're going to have several options, one of which is Gradient Fill. Now I avoid this one because it actually blends colors, which makes it difficult to choose text that will stand out. In addition, you have Picture or texture fill, which we're going to talk about in another video. We also have pattern fill, which gives you several patterns to choose from. It's a little bit busy, so I typically avoid that. And finally, we have the solid fill, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Now, when you go to solid fill, the next thing you're going to go to is the paint bucket on the bottom right corner there, because we want to choose a color. Once you have clicked on the paint bucket, you're going to get this window. And on this window, you see a palette of different colors, but these aren't your only options. Now, for example, an important feature is the eyedropper. When you bring your cursor on the eyedropper and click it, you can then move that cursor to another color, select that color, and your background will change to conform to that color. You also have all these other colors up here that you can choose from. But if you want to shade in between, then you can also go to the More Colors option and click on there. This window will appear after you've selected More Colors, and you can see there's a little triangle next to the color pointing to the specific shade of the color you're on. If you want to lighten or darken that shade, you just bring your cursor to that arrow and drag it up or down. Once you've found the shade you like, you move over to OK, you click that, and you can see the color background changes to conform to that. Now, let's take a look at fonts and see which fonts are ideal and how we can change them. As you go through all the font options that are available through PowerPoint, and there's more than I could care to count, the question becomes, which ones are appropriate for a PowerPoint slide? What fonts should we avoid? Ideally, you're going to avoid the highly stylized letterings, except for special occasions. Why? They often cause confusion. Let's take a look at this top letter T, for example. You can see there's a slight shadow behind it. And if any audience members have any sort of vision impairment, that's going to create blurs for them and make it difficult to distinguish which letter we're talking about. Also, some of the highly stylized letters are just curiously shaped. For example, this letter T looks like an inverted J or even the letter G. The reader won't be sure what letter you're using and therefore won't be able to read your message. And finally, we have simply highly stylized ones that are distracting and call attention to themselves. We want our audience members to focus on our message, not on our font style. Now, in addition, even when you choose a suitable font style, you want to avoid adding shadows and other effects to your text. You can see with the word shadows, I have a shadow behind it, and it's making it blurry and difficult to read. For these reasons, we always want to choose simple and crisp fonts. We also want to avoid serifs. What are serifs? They're the little hooks on the tails or edge of the letters. For example, in this top left corner, we have those two hooks coming down at the top and the two hooks flaring out on the bottom. And we see this with these other shapes as well. Now, why do we want to avoid these? The problem here is that, like the more stylized fonts, serifs can create blurring. This can make it difficult for people with vision impairments to clearly distinguish the letters. So what should we use instead? sans serif fonts. For example, Calibri, which is the default. I'm not a big fan of this one because the edges are a little bit rounded, and that's just not my personal preference. But we have Helvetica, which is a great font. It's got nice, sharp, crisp, clean edges. We have Futura, which you can also make Futura bold. We have Arial, and finally we have Abadi. And Abadi is actually the one that we're using for this PowerPoint slide here. So if you like these fonts, check that one out. We also want to ensure the color of the font stands out. This might mean having to change it from text box to text box and slide to slide. You see on the left side, we have the darkest blue up top and the lightest blue in the bottom, and we have a medium blue in the background. So those medium blues in the middle really blend in the background. It's difficult for the audience to see. But on the two extremes, it's a little easier. Now up top on the right, we have a dark, dark blue, and the text inside is a light blue. Not quite white, but because the background is so dark, we can afford to use a light blue instead of the almost white blue. Below that, we have a medium blue. Now in this context, this is a white text. We need the white text to stand out because if we use a medium or light blue, it might blend in a little bit and be difficult for the audience to see. Now, in addition, we want to consider color blindness. Not all of your audience members will be able to distinguish colors in the same way, so we don't want to use colors that might blend in or be difficult to discern from the background. Up top on the left now we have the color purple, on the very bottom we have a teal, and in between we have colors like red, orange, and yellow. Make sure the color you use stands out, and in addition, don't choose colors that vibrate against each other. So for example, this red here vibrates a little bit against the background, and it might make it difficult for the reader to focus on and see the letters clearly. Oftentimes we bring colors in, and even if the colors are standing still, the contrast between them will create the illusion that something is moving, and we don't want to do this with our text. So, how do you set up the font style? First, you're going to want to go to the Home tab. Now this is located in the top ribbon off to the far left next to the word File. Once you've selected the Home tab, you're going to see two drop-down menus. The one to the left here is for your font style. The one beside it is for the font size. When you click on the drop-down menu, it's going to show you all the different fonts that you can choose from. And if you don't want to scroll through them all alphabetically, you can simply type in the name of the font you want to use. Once you've chosen a color scheme and font style, you can start building slides using the default slide formats provided by PowerPoint, as well as the shapes. And get creative. Don't let those default transparent text boxes dictate what your slides are going to look like. Make them an expression of yourself. But also keep in mind, you want everything to be easy for your audience to process. So the one takeaway here is, while you're choosing colors and font styles, make sure that they don't distract from your message, but rather reinforce it. That's all we have for this edition of the Grammar of PowerPoint. We've shown you how to establish a background and choose font styles and colors. But if you want to learn how to integrate shapes, use animations, images, and transitions to convey grammatical meaning, check out some of our other videos. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.